So Apple has this new $400 iPhone, and I feel like it's going to be an incredibly important phone this year. Not just for Apple, not just for like iOS users that are hoping to upgrade, not even for Android users that want to upgrade. It's for the entire phone industry. Because when you look at that phone, you look at the specs that they've put into this iPhone SE, it really feels like a completely different type of like decision making went into this device. It feels like a, hey, how much can we pack into a $400 phone? How much can we give our customers for that money? Like, what do people actually want at that price point? And that's not normally what we see. The typical thinking, it feels, is with any kind of brand name phone, it's what crazy amount of tech can we stuff into this phone, and then how much can we sell it for? What's the highest price we can jack this thing up to before people stop buying it? That really feels like the trend that we've seen for the past 5-6 years. It's just crazy increase in price of all the flagship phones, like $1,200, $1,500. Now we're seeing $2,000 smartphones. These are the phones at the top end, right? The premium expensive stuff. But when these brands make their mid-tier market phones, like the $400 or $500 phones, they have to gimp these phones so hard so that the top end stuff doesn't look terrible in value by comparison, right? You got to make the $400 phones appropriately specced out so that the super expensive stuff looks good. But last year, there was an exception, the Pixel 3a, and I thought that this was one of the most important phones that came out last year because it was a phone that prioritized the camera. When I did the video on this thing, I remember thinking, I'd like to see Apple's response. I want to see what Apple does now, knowing that there is a $400 phone out there with a killer camera. And I think the iPhone SE is the response. Maybe not direct, right? Maybe this was planned a long time ago. Maybe it was never really in response to the Pixel 3a, but I love what this thing brings. And I hope it becomes a thing, right? I want more smartphone companies to have this mindset of like, hey, how good of an experience can we deliver for $400? Instead of this idea of like, hey, how do we con people into buying $2,000 smartphones, right? Those are very different mindsets. And the thing I find most interesting is I don't think there's a lot of companies that can pull this off. Like if you think about Apple, think about what's going on here. When they have a $400 smartphone that sits on the shelf with the rest of the lineup, if you're a potential customer, you walk into an Apple store, there are people out there that were going to buy an iPhone 11 or maybe an iPhone 11 Pro, and now they see this. Yeah, I'll go for that. Hell yeah, I'll save like the $400, $500, $600. I will buy the cheaper $400 phone. So they're losing some revenue in that sense, but they're probably gaining a huge chunk of people that would never have even considered an Apple phone, but now they got a $400 option and they come over. So if you think about how many other companies are willing to make a good $400 smartphone that makes the rest of their lineup look weirdly overpriced, right? Not many. And maybe that's the play. Maybe that's Apple's ultimate like Chad move where they're like, hey, smartphone industry, we don't even care about hardware anymore. Like, yeah, we got our expensive stuff, but we'll sell this cheap thing. It doesn't matter what you got. It doesn't matter if you come up with your Snapdragon 10,000 and 32 gigs of RAM. It doesn't matter because we have a $400 smartphone that people want to buy. And when people buy this thing, we can sell them services, and that's how Apple can make their money. So this whole idea of a $400 smartphone is just like, this is gonna change so many things in the industry. I love it, and I want to see how this thing plays out. Now, it's probably not a phone that's for the hardcore tech enthusiast, right? It's got a big forehead, big chin, and the screen itself is lackluster compared to the amazing options we have available, but a lot of people just don't care about that stuff. It does have wireless charging, it does have water resistance, and it does have that super fast A13 processor. It can shoot 4K 60 video, and because it's an Apple iPhone, it's going to have years of software support. It's like, I'm expecting 5+ years of software updates. Like, what other $400 smartphone can boast that? Right? Like to have that kind of software support for that many years, that's iPhone for you. Now, there is one thing that I feel like Apple kind of left out, like they got one in. It's the fact that they don't have a night mode on the iPhone SE. Like with that A13 processor, with the neural engine, I feel like they could have done it, maybe, but it's not in there. And there's also, I feel like, some collateral damage when it comes to the iPhone SE. Like the existence of this $400 smartphone heavily affects the resale market of everything, not just iPhones, but every phone out there, right? Especially like the older, like the ones that look like the iPhone SE, like the 8, the 7, the 6S, the 6, all of those, like those are worth very little now because of this $400 phone. And even the more expensive iPhones and Android phones, the whole market just gets shifted around a little bit because of the existence of this phone, which is kind of interesting. But this is the thing that's most interesting to me. What is Android's answer to this? What is an equivalent $400 smartphone? Like, I've been thinking about this. The closest thing I came up to was the Pixel 3a, right? But there's some deficiencies with that product that the iPhone SE does not have, like particularly processing strength. And the new one, the Pixel 4a, when that eventually comes out, that's probably the closest stuff, because when you try to look at everyone else in the space, right? Any other $400 smartphone, there's a half dozen phones out there that are really good, but they all can't compete with this iPhone SE. At least I don't think it can. Like, you need a phone from a reputable company that's gonna last with good software support. Who's doing that at $400? I'm not saying that it can't be done, and this is why this is so cool, because I think companies will try to step in. I mean, they have to. If you don't, you lose, right? Someone's gonna, like, every company now has to compete with the $400 iPhone. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. I'll see you guys next time.